Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist congregation of Terre, Haute. This congregation welcomes all people, regardless of their age, religion, race, nationality, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, or anything else that has been used to divide people. We are a group of people with our own opinions, our own ideas, our own dreams. But we share ideals. We share a common belief in a liberal religion. In our discussions, we may disagree with each other, but we must always remember that what unites us is stronger than what separates us. We must always end the service aware of the love that we have for each other.
Now is the time for meditation, prayer, and silence, followed by the singing of Spirit of Life on 123. Let us seek to become aware of that which is the best in us so that we may express it in our lives. Let us seek together in recognition of our membership in a community. Let us seek in silence in recognition of our individuality.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Opening words, number 418. Come into the circle of love and justice. Come into the community of mercy, holiness, and health. Come, and you shall know peace and joy.
Praise the source of faith and learning that has sparked and stoked the mind with a passion for discerning how the world has been designed. Let the sense of wonder flowing from the wonders we survey keep our faith forever
has divided us will merge.
And then compassion will be wedded to power.
And then softness will come to a world that is harsh and unkind.
And then both men and women will be gentle.
And then both women and men will be strong.
And then no person will be subject to another's will.
And then all will be rich and free and varied.
And then the greed of some will give way to the needs of many.
And then all will share equally in the earth's abundance.
And then all will care for the sick and the weak and the old.
And then all will nourish the young.
And then all will cherish life's creatures.
And then all will live in harmony with each other and the earth.
And then everywhere will be called Eden once again.
Well, thanks to Julie Young, our fearless chairperson, for not only inviting me to speak again, but again suggesting a theme. It's Women's History Month, and this week is also International Women's Day. Sometimes the most difficult part for a speaker of a program to a group like this is to decide what to talk about. So again, thank you, Julie, for the suggestion. The problem is, I didn't know very much about women's history. So either this is going to be a very short talk, or I better do some digging. The original, nevertheless, she persisted, came from an exchange between Elizabeth Warren's objections to the confirmation of Senator Jeff Sessions as the U.S. Attorney General. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell made this remark in defense of silencing during his comments following the vote. The expression went viral and was adopted by many groups. Its meaning has expanded to refer more broadly to women's persistence and in breaking barriers despite being silenced or ignored. I changed it to be more inclusive. I'll start with my experience. I was brought up in a family that was always supportive of me. My father let me know that I was smart and could be anything I wanted to be. The same was true for my sister. She became a lawyer, and I became a microbiologist. My brothers didn't get the same encouragement. My father clearly favored the girls. My mother was a hard worker with 4 kids and a house to keep. She went back to work as a bookkeeper when I, the youngest, was in 3rd grade. She set a good example for me of women in the workplace. I went to college, then grad school, then a postdoc. Many scientists take postdocs after receiving their PhD for a year or 2 to do research unimpeded by committee meetings or teaching. My first real job was at ISU in the Life Sciences Department. About 2 months after being there, Esther Atchison came into my office and told me I was getting a raise. I was puzzled, but she told me that I was hired at the same time as another person of the opposite gender, but with the same background. He was hired at a greater salary, and Esther, as the EEOC chairman at ISU, didn't think it was appropriate, so she fought for me, and we won. By the way, Esther Atchison was a member of this congregation before she moved to Indianapolis. I next worked for the wastewater treatment plant for the city, but soon found out there was a better job as the director of air pollution for the county, so I applied for that job. I interviewed but didn't get the job. Another male person did. He claimed he was qualified because he had a science degree from ISU. The problem is, there is no such degree. Not only that, one of the commissioners called me to let me know that the other applicant had a family and was without a job, so the commissioners decided that he should get the job, and he accepted the position. I thought I was more qualified, so I filed for discrimination in hiring, but my attorney didn't think we could win, so we dropped it. I was then fired from my city job for being a troublemaker. I taught at Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology for a year while someone was on sabbatical. You may know that Rose has always been very serious about student evaluations of teachers. One day, at the beginning of my second quarter, Sam Hulbert, chancellor of the college, came to my office to reveal one of my reviews. It said, "I never knew a woman could be smart." He thanked me. I really didn't think too much about these incidents at the time. I didn't realize they were part of a larger pattern that many women were facing. Now I know differently. But enough about me. What's happening in the rest of the world? Well, here's some history of International Women's Day and the Unitarian Universalist contributions. Though International Women's Day may be widely celebrated abroad, and more than in the United States, its roots are planted firmly in American soil. Controversy clouds the history of International Women's Day. According to a common version of the holiday's origins, it was established in 1907 to mark the 50th anniversary of a brutally repressed protest by New York City's female garment and textile workers. But there's a problem with that story. Neither the 1987 protest nor the 50th anniversary tribute may have actually occurred. In fact, research has emerged in the 1980s that suggested that the origin of the myth was invented in the 1950s as a part of a Cold War-era effort to separate International Women's Day from its socialist roots. The historian Temma Kaplan revisited the official National Women's Day held in New York City on February 28th in 1909. The organizers, members of the Socialist Party of America, wanted it to be on a Sunday so that working women could participate. Thousands of people showed up at various events uniting suffragist and socialist causes whose goals were often at odds. Labor organizer Leona O'Reilly and others addressed crowds at the main meeting in the Murray Hill Lyceum in New York City. In Brooklyn, writer Charlotte Perkins Gillen told a UU congregation of the Parkside Church, "It is true that a woman's duty is centered on the home and motherhood, but home should mean the whole country and not confined to the 3 or 4 rooms or a city or a state." The concept of a Woman's Day caught on in Europe. On March 19th in 1911, the 40th anniversary of the Paris Commune, a radical socialist government that briefly ruled France in 1871, the first International Women's Day was held, drawing more than 1 million people to rallies worldwide. With the outbreak of World War I in 1914, most attempts at social reform ground to a halt, but women continued to march and demonstrate on International Women's Day. Most dramatically, a massive demonstration was led by the Russian feminist Andrea Kolotain that began on February 23, 1917. According to the Gregorian calendar, it was March 8th to the rest of us. It proved to be the link in a chain of events that led to the abdication of Tsar Nicholas II and the Russian Revolution. After the Tsar's abdication, a provisional government was formed until a constituent assembly could be elected. It became the first government of a major power to grant women the right to vote. In recognition of its importance, Vladimir Lenin, founder of Russia's Communist Party, declared Women's Day an official Soviet holiday in 1917. Communists in Spain and China later adopted the holiday as well. Sometime in 1945, the terminology shifted from Women's Day to Women's Day. Until the mid-1970s, International Women's Day would be celebrated primarily in socialist countries. I think World War II had an impact too. Rosie the Riveter, with her "Yes We Can" slogan, brought women out of their homes in droves to join the workforce to support the war effort. It reminds me of my theme, "Thus We Persisted." Surely it was a turning point for women in America. In 1975, recognized as the International Women's Year, the United Nations General Assembly began celebrating March 8th as International Women's Day. The purpose was to recognize the fact that securing peace and social progress and the full enjoyment of human rights and fundamental freedoms require that active participation, equality, and development of women, and to acknowledge the contribution of women to the strengthening of international peace and security. By 2014, International Women's Day was celebrated in more than 100 countries and had been made an official holiday in more than 25. Over the years, however, the celebration of International Women's Day strayed from the holiday's political roots. In Argentina, for example, it was largely commercialized, with men buying flowers and gifts for the women in their lives. In China, despite the country's long history of International Women's Day, recent holiday events have focused on shopping and beauty events such as fashion shows. Last year, in a somewhat bizarre tribute, a group of Chinese men climbed a mountain in dresses and high heels as an attempt to experience the hardship of being a woman. Due to its ties with socialism and communism, perhaps it's not surprising that International Women's Day didn't catch on here in the United States the way it did in other countries. Recently, however, international digital marketing campaigns have brought the holiday, in its less political form, further into American culture, complete with corporate sponsorship from PepsiCo and other brands. Other groups are seeking to reclaim International Women's Day and return it to its activist past by continuing to demand recognition and rights for women and their work. Many of us are familiar with the famous women of Unitarian Universalism's history. Our foremothers, ordained as early as the 1860s, the women who marched in suffrage, worked tirelessly for social justice, and advocated for an increased role for women in the public sphere. However, it was not until the latter half of the 20th century that the full participation of women and full inclusion of women's prospects became imperatives embraced by the Unitarian Universalism as a whole. The embrace of women in our religion, and in many cases, meant true change, a fundamental re-examination of the construction of tradition, theology, community, and power in our congregations. The first official call for an association-wide soul-searching about gender was the Women and Religion Resolution passed in 1977 at the General Assembly. The resolution's call bubbled up from a work of hundreds of men and women who formed caucuses, conscious raising group, and other feminist spaces during the 60s and 70s. Dottie was and still is an active participant in this group who makes contributions to the denomination. One striking aspect of this Women in Religion group was the creative ways it found to express women's voices and experiences outside the traditional male-dominated spaces like the pulpit and the chairmanship of the board. This group explored art as a method of transforming society, showing how creating music together became an essential piece of the women's liberation movement. As an example, our hymn, Spirit of Life, by Carolyn McDade, came from this group. Women's History Month is a time to reflect on the incredible and often overlooked contributions that women have made throughout history. Many Unitarian, Universalist, and Unitarian Universalist women have not only shaped and led the UU faith, but they also left an undeniable impact on history in general. Here are some of the countless influential women who changed the world for the better. Olympia Brown was one of the first women ministers whose ordination was recognized by any religious denomination. Sophia Lyons-Foss. Without Sophia Lyons-Foss, UU religious education would not be what it is today. Foss revolutionized the traditional religious education, the way traditional education was taught, making complex theological concepts and history more accessible and exciting for a younger audience through storytelling, painting, other forms of creativity, and self-expression. Foz wrote 40 books and served as the editor of the Children's Museum for the American Unitarian Association. Living to the age of 102, Foz never ceased in her quest for knowledge and innovation. Margaret Fuller. Unitarian Margaret Fuller was an author, editor, critic, teacher, feminist, and revolutionary who played a key role in the Transcendentalist movement. She served as a war correspondent and wrote about poor conditions in prisons and mental hospitals for the New York Tribune. She is best known for writing the first American manifesto for women's equality. It was called Women in the 19th Century and was published in 1845. Cecilia Payne Kapitocek was the first woman to receive tenure and the first to chair a department on the Faculty of Arts and Sciences at Harvard University. An astronomer, she discovered that hydrogen is millions times more abundant than any other element in the universe. Along with many more scientific breakthroughs, she also taught Sunday school at the First Parish Church in Lexington, Massachusetts. During a time when the sciences were even more dominated by men than they are today, her persistence and brilliance made incredible strides for women in the field. Frances Ellen Watkins Harper was a prolific writer, lecturer, and reformer. She wrote many books of poetry with strong anti-slavery themes, as well as a novel about African American life during Reconstruction. A writer for the African Methodist Episcopal Church and a member of the Unitarian Church, Watkins once refused to give up her seat on a Philadelphia streetcar. When the conductor refused to take her money at the end of her ride, she threw it on the floor and left. She was undoubtedly a courageous and powerful voice for justice. Viola Gregg Liazzo was a UU layperson and mother of 5 children from Detroit, Michigan. Passionate about racial justice issues, she traveled to Selma, Alabama, to participate in marches in 1965. While transporting marches in her car, she was shot and killed by members of the Ku Klux Klan. Today, she is remembered as a martyr for the civil rights movement and is honored along with Jimmy Lee Jackson and the Reverend James Reeb on the Selma Memorial Plaque at UUA headquarters. Mary Livermore was a temperance and suffrage leader, popular lecturer, and editor and writer. She wrote about her experiences working as a nurse during the Civil War and noted contributions by other women throughout the period. She was president of the Massachusetts Women Suffrage Association and held many prominent positions, as well as helping to establish the Home for Aged Women and the Hospital for Women and Children. With a 25-year history of public speaking and a penchant for challenging authority, she certainly left her mark. I know there are cough drops here someplace. UU Margaret Mosley was denied entrance to every nursing program in Boston because of her race. So instead, she became a civil rights activist. She founded a consumer cooperative and served on the board of the Civil Liberties Union in Massachusetts, as well as a founding member of the Freedom House, a leader of the anti-McCarthyism movement in the 1950s. She also helped form NAACP chapters throughout Cape Cod. The second UU Community Cooperative House in Boston's Jamaica Plain neighborhood will be named for her. Judith Sargent Murray was the first woman born in the U.S. to have her plays performed professionally. She wrote numerous poems, essays on religion, politics, education, and the manners and customs of the day, illustrating her views through fictional stories. The wife of John Murray, one of the founders of American Universalism, she wrote one of the earliest published statements on women's rights, on the equality of the sexes. It was first published in 1790 and again in a feminist publication in 1973, showing her impact spanned generations. In closing, I'd like to read a few quotes. Marie Curie, life is not easy for any of us. We must have perseverance and, above all, confidence in ourselves. We must believe that we are gifted for something and that this thing must be attained. G.D. Anderson, feminism isn't about making women strong. Women are already strong. It's about changing the world, the way the world perceives that strength. The Dalai Lama, I believe that women are more empathetic and sensitive to the feelings of others, qualities I first learned from my mother. There is also scientific evidence that when it comes to compassion, women are more sensitive to others' pain. Therefore, I feel that if more of our leaders were women, the world would be a more peaceful and understanding place. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, real change, enduring change, happens one step at a time. And lastly, from our friend Jerry Lynn Lambert on Facebook, the circle of women around us weave invisible nets of love that carry us when we are weak and sing with us when we are strong. Thank you.
Our closing hymn is number 207, Earth Was Given as a Garden. Our closing words are number 680. Because of those who came before, we are. In spite of their failings, we believe. Because of, and in spite of the horizons of their vision, we too dream. Let us go remembering to praise, to live in the moment, to love mightily, to bow to the mystery.
May the blessed